Senate Bill 38 is set to go into effect on January 1st after Governor Greg Abbott signed it into law earlier this year as a way to defend property owners' rights.
Right now, as we speak, the rules of the game are changing for millions of people across Texas. If you own property in this state, if you rent an apartment, if you have a home or know someone who does, what I am about to tell you is going to affect your life in ways you probably have not even thought about yet. Starting January 1st of this year, several new laws went into effect that fundamentally alter how property rights work in Texas, and the reason this matters so much is because these are not minor adjustments or technical tweaks buried in legal paperwork. These are significant shifts in power between landlords and tenants, between cities and homeowners, and the consequences are already starting to play out in courtrooms and communities across the state. Let me start with the law that has everyone talking, because it is the one that is going to touch the most lives in the most immediate way. Senate Bill 38 is designed to speed up the eviction process in Texas, making it faster and easier for property owners to remove people from homes and apartments when they believe those people do not have the legal right to be there. Now, on the surface, that might sound reasonable. After all, if someone is squatting in a house they do not own or refusing to pay rent they legally owe, why should a property owner have to wait months or even years to get their property back? That is the argument supporters make, and they have a point when it comes to clear-cut cases of trespassing or fraud. But here is where it gets complicated, and this is the part that should concern every single person who rents a home in Texas right now. This new law allows landlords to seek what are called summary judgments in eviction cases, which means they can ask a judge to rule in their favor without going through a full trial where both sides present evidence and make their case. In practice, what this means is that an eviction can happen much faster than before, sometimes in a matter of days rather than weeks or months. The law also introduces electronic service of eviction notices, which is a major change from how things worked before. Previously, eviction notices had to be physically delivered to the tenant, either by hand or posted on the door, which gave people a much better chance of actually seeing and responding to the notice. Now, those notices can be sent electronically through email or text message, and here is the problem with that. How many of us check every single email that comes into our inbox? How many people have old email addresses they barely use anymore, or phone numbers that changed, or spam filters that automatically send certain messages to folders we never look at? Think about what this means in real life. Imagine you are a single parent working 2 jobs, trying to keep up with rent and bills and everything else life throws at you. Your landlord sends an eviction notice to an email address you gave them 2 years ago when you first moved in, but you do not check that email regularly because you mostly use it for junk mail and online shopping. You have no idea the notice was sent. By the time you find out, it might be too late to respond, too late to get legal help, too late to explain that there was a misunderstanding about payment or that you were waiting for assistance funds to come through. The eviction process moves forward without you even knowing it happened until suddenly there is a court order and you are being told to leave your home. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is already happening. In Travis County, which includes Austin, eviction rates hit record highs even before this new law took effect. We are talking about thousands of families every year facing eviction, and now the process is going to move even faster. Housing advocates and legal aid organizations are sounding the alarm because they know what is coming. They have seen the data. They know that when eviction processes speed up, the people who get hurt the most are not the professional squatters or the scammers the law is supposedly targeting. The people who get hurt are working families who fall behind on rent because of a medical emergency or a car breakdown or losing hours at work. They are elderly people on fixed incomes who get confused by legal paperwork and do not know how to respond. They are domestic violence survivors who moved out suddenly and did not realize they needed to formally break their lease. Now, I want to be clear about something because this is important. There are legitimate cases where landlords need a faster process. There really are situations where someone moves into a property illegally, refuses to leave, and the current owner is stuck in legal limbo for months while someone else lives in their house without paying a dime. Those cases exist, and they create real hardship for property owners who often are not wealthy corporations, but regular people who saved up to buy a rental property as an investment for their retirement. The problem is that Senate Bill 38 does not just target those clear-cut cases, it speeds up the entire eviction system, which means good tenants with legitimate disputes or temporary hardships get swept up in the same fast-track process as actual squatters. And here is something most people do not realize about evictions. Once you have an eviction on your record, even if it was a mistake, even if the case was dismissed, even if you won in court, it follows you. Landlords run background checks, and when they see an eviction filing, many of them will not even give you a chance to explain. They just move on to the next applicant. So this is not just about whether someone loses their current home. It is about whether they can find another place to live at all. An eviction can trap people in a cycle where they cannot get approved for decent housing anymore, which pushes them into more expensive week-to-week motels or staying with friends and family in overcrowded situations, or in the worst cases, into homelessness. The timing of all this could not be worse. Texas is in the middle of a housing affordability crisis that has been building for years. Rent prices in major cities like Austin, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio have been climbing faster than wages. People are paying more and more of their income just to keep a roof over their heads, which means they have less margin for error. If the car breaks down, if the kids get sick, if work hours get cut, suddenly they are choosing between paying rent and buying groceries. They are one paycheck away from falling behind, and now the law just made it easier and faster to kick them out when they stumble. But the changes happening in Texas right now go beyond just evictions. There is another new law that is going to affect property owners in a completely different way, and it is connected to something we have all seen more of in recent years, which is natural disasters. House Bill 30 restricts what cities can do with property taxes after disasters strike. Specifically, it prevents cities from raising property taxes above voter-approved limits following natural disasters unless they hold an election first and get permission from voters. This law was aimed directly at Houston after what happened following Hurricane Beryl. Let me explain what happened there, because it shows exactly why this debate is so complicated. When Hurricane Beryl hit Houston, it caused massive damage across the city. Homes were flooded, infrastructure was destroyed, power was out for days, and the city needed money immediately to start recovery efforts and help people get back on their feet. In situations like that, cities often raise property taxes to generate emergency revenue because they need funds right away and cannot wait months for the normal budget process to play out. Houston did exactly that, and a lot of homeowners were furious. They had just survived a hurricane, many of them had damage to their own properties, insurance claims they were fighting, and suddenly their property tax bill was going up. It felt like getting kicked when they were already down. So House Bill 30 was passed to prevent cities from doing that anymore. No more emergency tax increases without voter approval. On one level, this makes sense. Nobody wants to see their taxes go up, especially right after a disaster when they are already struggling financially. But here is the other side of it. When a hurricane or flood or tornado hits a city, that city needs money fast to respond. They need to clear debris, repair roads, restore services, help people find shelter, and coordinate all the emergency response efforts that keep a community functioning. If they cannot raise taxes and they have to wait for a special election, which takes time to organize and hold, then where does the money come from in the meantime? This creates a real dilemma that does not have an easy answer. Do you protect homeowners from sudden tax increases when they are already dealing with disaster recovery, or do you give cities the flexibility they need to respond quickly and effectively to emergencies? Both sides have valid points, and the truth is that somebody is going to get hurt no matter which choice you make. If you let cities raise taxes without voter approval, homeowners bear the immediate financial burden at a time when they can least afford it. If you require voter approval first, cities might not have the resources they need to help people in the critical days and weeks after a disaster, which could mean slower recovery, more prolonged suffering, and possibly more long-term damage to the community. What makes this even more relevant right now is that climate patterns are changing and extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and more severe. Texas has always dealt with hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, but the intensity and frequency seem to be increasing. Houston alone has faced multiple major flooding events in recent years. The Texas power grid has struggled during extreme heat and cold. Wildfires have threatened communities that never had to worry about them before. In other words, the scenario that House Bill 30 addresses is not some rare exception anymore. It is becoming a regular occurrence, which means this tension between cities needing emergency funding and homeowners not wanting tax increases is going to keep coming up again and again. Now, I want to tie all of this together because these laws do not exist in isolation. They are happening at the same moment in the same state, affecting the same people, and they all point to the same underlying conflict. It is a conflict about who has power and who bears risk when it comes to property in Texas. Senate Bill 38 shifts power toward landlords and makes it easier to remove tenants quickly. House Bill 30 shifts power toward taxpayers and makes it harder for cities to raise revenue after disasters. In both cases, there is a group that gains protection and a group that loses it. Property owners argue that they need these protections. They say they have invested their money, taken on risk, and should have the right to control their property and not be forced to subsidize people who are not paying rent or cities that want to raise taxes without accountability. Renters and advocacy groups argue that these laws tip the balance too far in the other direction, leaving vulnerable people with even less security and fewer protections at a time when housing is already unaffordable unaffordable, and disasters are becoming more common. Both groups are looking at the same situation and seeing it from completely different angles, which is why this debate gets so heated and why the laws that come out of it end up making some people very happy and other people very worried. Here is what you need to understand about the practical impact of all this. If you are a renter in Texas, you need to be more careful than ever about staying on top of your lease obligations and making absolutely sure that your landlord has your current contact information. Check the email address and phone number your landlord has on file for you, and if it is outdated, update it immediately. Set up alerts or reminders so you never miss a payment deadline, and if you do fall behind for any reason, communicate with your landlord right away instead of hoping the problem will go away. Document everything in writing. If you have a dispute with your landlord about repairs or conditions or anything else, put it in writing, save copies, and know your rights under Texas law. If you receive any kind of eviction notice, even if you think it is a mistake, do not ignore it. Get legal help immediately because you might have much less time to respond than you think. If you are a property owner or landlord, you need to understand that even though these laws give you more tools to act quickly, you still have to follow the proper legal process. Cutting corners or trying to force someone out without going through the correct procedures can backfire and expose you to legal liability. Make sure you are serving notices correctly, documenting everything, and giving tenants the information they are entitled to under the law. And if you are someone who owns property in a Texas city, especially in areas prone to natural disasters, you should be paying attention to your city's budget and tax proposals. Under the new law, you will have more say in whether taxes go up after a disaster, but that also means you have more responsibility to stay informed and participate in those decisions when they come up. The broader picture here is that Texas is wrestling with the same issues a lot of states are dealing with right now. Housing costs are rising faster than incomes. More people are living paycheck to paycheck with no financial cushion. Natural disasters are getting worse and more expensive to recover from, and there is a fundamental disagreement about how to balance property rights with housing security, about where to draw the line between individual freedom and collective responsibility. These new laws represent one answer to those questions, an answer that prioritizes property owner rights and taxpayer control, but it is not the only possible answer, and it definitely is not the end of the conversation. What happens next is going to depend a lot on how these laws actually play out in practice. Are we going to see a spike in evictions now that the process is faster? Are families going to end up homeless because they missed an email notification? Are cities going to struggle to recover from the next major hurricane because they cannot raise the funds they need quickly enough? Or will these laws work the way their supporters hope, protecting property owners from squatters and taxpayers from runaway government spending without causing the harmful side effects that critics fear? We are about to find out, and the stakes are high for everyone involved. This is not something you can afford to ignore or assume does not apply to you. If you live in Texas, whether you own a home or rent an apartment, whether you are a landlord with rental properties or someone who just moved here last month, these laws affect you right now. They change the rules you are operating under, and understanding those changes could be the difference between keeping your home and losing it, between getting the help you need after a disaster and being stuck without resources. So here is what I'm asking you to do. Stay informed about what is happening. If you rent, know your rights as a tenant and make sure you are protecting yourself from fast-track evictions. If you own property, understand the new tools available to you, but also the responsibilities that come with them. If you live in a city that might face natural disasters, pay attention to how your local government is handling emergency funding now that the rules have changed. Talk to your neighbors about this. Share information with people who might not know what is going on. A lot of folks, especially those who do not follow the news closely or who do not speak English as their first language, might have no idea these laws changed until it is too late. And frankly, if you think these laws are good or if you think they are harmful, either way, make your voice heard. Contact your state representatives. Show up to city council meetings. Vote in local elections where these issues get decided. The people who wrote these laws and the people who will write future laws are listening to whoever speaks up, so if you have an opinion about whether Texas struck the right balance here, do not keep it to yourself. Democracy only works when people participate, and housing policy is one of those areas where participation really matters, because it affects something as fundamental as where people live and whether they can afford to stay there. The reality is that the housing situation in Texas was already difficult before these laws took effect. Families were already struggling, cities were already trying to figure out how to pay for disaster recovery, landlords were already dealing with problem tenants and property damage. These new laws do not solve those underlying problems. At best, they shift who bears the burden and who has the power in specific situations. At worst, they could make some of the problems worse for the people who are already most vulnerable. Time will tell which way it goes, but we do not have the luxury of waiting around to see what happens without paying attention. This is happening now, and the choices people make in the next few months, whether they are judges in interpreting these laws, landlords deciding how to use them, tenants trying to protect themselves, or voters deciding what kind of city and state they want to live in, those choices are going to shape Texas for years to come. So keep watching this story, keep asking questions, keep looking out for yourself and your neighbors. And if you found this information valuable, if it helped you understand something you did not know before, or see a situation from a new angle, then share it with someone else who needs to know. Comment below with your own experiences or concerns about how these laws might affect you. Subscribe to this channel so you stay updated as this situation continues to develop, because I can promise you this is not the last time we are going to be talking about housing and property rights in Texas. There is more coming, and the more people who understand what is really happening, the better equipped we all are to navigate it together.